Hello and welcome to Sleepsmyth, your peaceful place to unwind, dream, and drift gently into sleep. Before we start our story tonight, let me help you settle in with a simple, calming breath like a gentle lullaby for your body and mind. So, find a cozy spot, maybe snuggle under your blanket, and softly close your eyes. Now, breathing quietly through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath softly for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now, slowly exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds, letting all the tension melt away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do that again. Nice and easy. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One last time, just like a soft whisper. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel your body getting lighter, your mind quiet, as if you're being tucked gently into a calm, warm bed. Thank you for sharing this moment with Sleepsmyth. Now, relax completely and let the story carry you into a peaceful, restful sleep. Let's begin.
Above the sleeping world, where the air hums softly and the horizon fades into night, the sky stretches wide and endless. Stars shimmer faintly, their light carrying stories from across time and space. Between them move travelers of the heavens, unseen yet powerful. Blazing trails of fire, swift sparks of brilliance, and fragments of the cosmos weave through the darkness. They are not mere points of light, but carriers of fate, memory, and wonder. Each one burns with purpose, weaving messages across the night, brushing the lands and hearts below. From the southern lands of the Aztec Empire, a fiery serpent arcs through the heavens. Its body twists and coils, a ribbon of flame cutting through the night, leaving trails of warning and wonder in its wake. Those who gaze upon it feel a surge of destiny, a heat of transformation, as the sky itself seems to pulse with change. Far to the east, above the Philippine Islands, a streak of brilliance arcs across the heavens. It rises like a hero's spirit, scattering sparks of hope and courage across mountains and seas. For a moment, the night is alive with light, carrying whispers of bravery, longing, and the memory of journeys that shaped the earth below. And in the quiet villages of Loket, Bohemia, a fragment of the cosmos tears through the darkness. It crashes with weight and fire, stirring awe and fear, leaving the ground trembling beneath its descent. A shard of the universe itself, it carries the stories of fate and consequence, a reminder that what falls from the heavens is never without meaning. These are not mere points of light, nor fleeting sparks in the void. They are messengers, born of fire and stone, bearing tales older than mountains, older than seas. They blaze, they fall, they endure, each a thread woven into the endless fabric of the cosmos. Tonight, lift your eyes and follow them. Trace the paths of fire, brilliance, and falling stone. Feel the pulse of the universe stir within you. Its light brushing the earth, its stories brushing your soul. Let yourself drift among the flames and sparks. And when you close your eyes, carry the sky with you, knowing that the heavens themselves are alive with tales yet to be told. Comet's fiery serpent, omen of Montezuma's night, a blazing herald from the heavens, weaving fire and warning across the night sky of the Aztec Empire. Valley beneath starlight. Night draped itself across the valley of Anahuac, vast and endless, its cloak shimmering with countless points of fire. Stars scattered above like jade beads spilled upon obsidian, each one trembling as if alive, each one a divine glyph written upon the firmament. Beneath their glow, Lake Texcoco spread wide, still as glass, reflecting the jeweled sky as though the heavens themselves had descended to rest upon the waters. From the center of the lake rose Tenochtitlan, the dream of the Mexica made stone and song. Causeways stretched across the waters like outstretched arms, linking the island city to the shores beyond. Whitewashed temples gleamed under the moon, their steps steep and solemn, their spires piercing the velvet expanse. Braziers crowned their summits, smoke rising in silver threads that curled upward, seeking the stars. The night was alive with sound. Coyotes called from the far hills, frogs croaked from the reeds, and somewhere in the distance, the first low beat of a drum stirred the air. All was woven together into a single tapestry, each sound a thread, each movement a reminder that the earth was breathing with the heavens. For the Mexica, nothing in this vast world was silent or empty. Every star, every flame, every ripple of water carried meaning. In the palace of Tenochtitlan, Montezuma stood still. He wore a cloak embroidered with turquoise and feathers that glimmered faintly in the moonlight, yet his eyes did not rest on his own splendor. His gaze lifted upward, steady, searching. Ruler of the Mexica, he bore the weight of empires and the voices of gods, yet still he looked to the night sky like a child awaiting an answer. For the sky had always spoken to his people, sometimes with gentleness, sometimes with fire. The lake lay hushed, the city breathing in rhythm with the slow rise and fall of the drums. In that stillness, an unease pressed upon the valley, subtle yet undeniable. Smoke climbed straight and unbroken, as if the air itself had ceased to stir. The owls quieted, the dogs lay restless, and above, the stars shone too bright, as though watching with intent. Something unseen lingered beyond them, waiting, patient, inevitable. Rhythm of drums. The drums deepened, their hollow pulse spilling from the sacred precinct into every corner of the city. They rolled like distant thunder, swelling and fading, yet never ceasing, as though the very heartbeat of Tenochtitlan had been given sound. The people stirred in their homes, fishermen paused their paddles on the lake, farmers among the Chinampas lifted their heads, all listening, all bound by that same rhythm. In the temple courts, priests moved in slow procession. They carried bowls of burning copal, its fragrance rising sweet and pungent, drifting skyward in curling strands that mingled with the starlight. Their chants rose with the smoke, weaving syllables older than the empire itself, words that had bound the Mexica to their gods since the first stones of the city were laid. They sang not only to be heard, but to be carried upward, to touch the unseen powers that dwelled in the endless dark above. Upon the temple steps, firelight flickered against carved serpents and suns. Obsidian blades gleamed, maize and blossoms were scattered as offerings, and still the priest's eyes wandered upward restless. They had watched the heavens for signs, as their fathers had before them, for in the wandering lights lay both promise and warning. Tonight, the stars seemed sharper, their glow too insistent, as if pressing closer to earth. Montezuma felt the weight of that same unease. Within his palace, the drums pressed against his chest with each beat, steady as his own heart. He thought of his empire stretching across mountains and valleys, rivers and deserts, countless souls beneath his rule, and yet none of that splendor eased the heaviness that tightened within him. He too raised his eyes to the sky, searching, waiting. The people followed his gaze without knowing. Fishermen resting on their canoes, mothers quieting their children, farmers pausing in their rows of maize, all eyes lifted, bound by something unspoken, some stirring within the night that called them to look upward. And then upon the horizon, something glimmered. At first faint, no brighter than a spark struck from flint, it lingered, refusing to fade. Slowly it stretched, lengthening into a pale, unbroken line, like fire drawn by an unseen hand across the heavens. Murmurs stirred in the city, drums faltered for a breath, and the first trace of the fiery serpent began to awaken in the firmament. Serpent of flame. Across the velvet dome of night, the spark unfurled into brilliance. What began as a glimmer now blazed, stretching its luminous body from horizon to horizon, a serpent wrought of fire and breath. Its tail shimmered in rippling strands, pale yet fierce, trailing behind like the banners of a god unfurled in the windless sky. Stars dimmed beside its glow, as though bowing in reverence or shrinking in fear. Gasps rippled through the city. On rooftops and streets, in canoes upon the lake, in fields along the causeways, men and women froze where they stood. Children clutched at their mothers, priests gripped their bowls, warriors held their spears without moving. None could look away. All of Tenochtitlan seemed drawn into that fiery gaze, as if the heavens themselves had stooped low to command their attention. The serpent's body burned white at its heart, but its edges glimmered with shades of jade and amber, shimmering like scales caught in firelight. It writhed in silence, yet its presence roared louder than any storm. The people whispered among themselves, voices trembling with awe and dread. Some fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the stone. Others lifted their hands skyward, murmuring prayers to Huitzilopochtli, to Tezcatlipoca, to Quetzalcoatl, unsure which god had sent such a messenger. From the palace terraces, Montezuma stood transfixed. His counselors shifted uneasily at his side, but none dared break the silence that bound them. For the emperor's face was lit not only by the fire of the comet, but by something deeper: fear, reverence, and the weight of knowing. For Montezuma was not only a ruler of men, he was keeper of the omens, interpreter of the signs, and in this blazing serpent he read not wonder alone, but warning. The drums began again, slower, deeper, their rhythm faltering as though uncertain. Each beat seemed to chase the serpent across the sky, yet could never catch it. Priests lifted their arms and voices, chanting with urgency now, calling upon the old gods to speak, to answer, to reveal what fate the fiery sign carried. The copal smoke rose faster, its fragrance mingling with the heatless fire above, as if to bind earth and sky. And still the comet burned. Hours passed, yet its brilliance did not fade. It held above the city like a sword unsheathed, suspended by unseen hands, pointing not outward but downward, toward them, toward the empire, toward Montezuma himself. The serpent writhed in silence, yet its presence thundered in the hearts of all who gazed upon it. It was no passing light. It was a message etched upon the firmament, a decree none could deny. Sacred quiet. Night lingered heavy above Tenochtitlan, though it no longer felt like night at all. The comet's fire had stripped the sky of its darkness, bathing temples, palaces, and waters in a pale and unearthly glow. It was as if the moon had multiplied, as if a second sun, ghostly and cold, had come to haunt the hours meant for rest. The air itself seemed altered, thick with waiting, filled with a weight too vast for human breath. The people had grown quiet. After the first cries of awe and fear, silence fell, spreading across the city like a tide. In their homes, families huddled together, eyes lifted to their reed roofs that glowed faintly from the serpent's fire above. On the causeways, traders and travelers set down their burdens, gazing skyward without a word. Canoes drifted upon the lake unmoving, paddles forgotten in the hands of their bearers. Even the animals seemed struck dumb. No owls cried, no coyotes howled, not even the reeds stirred in the midnight breeze. The silence was not peace. It was the silence of a held breath, of hearts braced for what would follow. For the Mexican knew well the ways of omens. They knew that the sky spoke, and that its voice was never idle. A star that moved when it should not, a cloud shaped like a blade, lightning that struck in clear air, each carried meaning, each carried warning. And now above them stretched the greatest sign of all, a serpent aflame, lingering night after night as if refusing to be forgotten. Montezuma did not sleep. In the halls of his palace, he sat upon his throne of jade, the comet's glow reaching even here, pale light seeping through woven mats and painted walls. His counselors gathered at his side, their faces drawn and restless, but the emperor's gaze never wavered from the open sky beyond. His heart beat in time with the silence, his breath shallow as though fearing to break it. For he too knew that such signs did not appear without purpose. The gods did not waste their fire. At last he summoned the priests and seers. Cloaked in white and crimson, crowned with feathers and obsidian discs, they entered the palace courts with bowed heads, their steps measured, their chants low and trembling. They carried offerings of maize, jade, and blood, laying them at the feet of the emperor before turning their eyes skyward. And when they beheld the fiery serpent blazing above, their chants faltered, their faces blanched, and their silence joined the silence of the city. No voice dared name it. No tongue dared speak its meaning aloud. For in that breathless stillness, all hearts trembled with the same unspoken fear, that this serpent of flame was not a promise, but a warning, a herald of change sweeping closer with every heartbeat. Eyes of the Emperor. Montezuma stood alone upon the palace terrace, where the night opened wide above the lake. The comet still reigned in the sky, a serpent of fire coiled across the heavens, its head aglow with blinding white, its tail stretching far into the dark. It had not faded. It had not moved. Night after night it burned with the same brilliance, as though fastened to the firmament by the will of the gods themselves. The emperor's eyes did not turn from it. His counselors murmured behind him, priests whispered among themselves, but he heard none of it. His gaze was fixed, unwavering, his mind sinking deeper with every heartbeat into the Omen's fire. For Montezuma was no stranger to signs. He had read the heavens since his youth, studied the glyphs of stars, listened to the chants of seers, and never before had he seen the sky torn open by such a serpent. The city lay quiet at his feet. Fires glowed in courtyards, their smoke drifting pale against the comet's brilliance. Families prayed in hushed voices, offerings placed at the thresholds of homes. The lake reflected the serpent's body so that it seemed two of them coiled above and below, enclosing Tenochtitlan in their fiery embrace. All was silent but for the slow beat of distant drums, steady and solemn, as though the heart of the city itself were speaking to its king. Montezuma closed his eyes, breathing the copal smoke rising from nearby censers. Its fragrance wrapped around him, sweet and sharp, lifting his spirit upward toward the flame of the heavens. He whispered the names of the gods, Tezcatlipoca, Lord of Fate, Huitzilopochtli, Keeper of War, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who once walked among men. His voice trembled as he asked for their guidance, for their meaning, for there were written in the blazing serpent across the sky. Visions flickered before him. A sea of warriors with faces painted white. A temple flame guttering though no wind touched it. A river of blood running through maize fields golden in the sun. And always above it, the serpent watching, unblinking, its fiery body coiled and waiting. Montezuma's breath grew shallow, his heart heavy, as if the vision pressed its weight into his very bones. When his eyes opened again, the comet still burned, unchanged, eternal. Yet Montezuma's gaze was no longer that of a ruler gazing at the stars. It was the gaze of a man who had seen too much, who carried the knowledge of doom wrapped in fire and silence. And though he said nothing, though his lips remained sealed, those who stood near him saw the change in his eyes. They too lowered their heads, for they knew the emperor had read in the sky what none wished to name aloud. Blood and copal. Temples rose like mountains of stone against the night, their stairways steep, their spires crowned with fire. Upon every platform, braziers burned brighter than before, flames leaping high as priests fed them with resin, blossoms, and feathers. Smoke thickened over the sacred precinct, swirling in silver veils that drifted skyward, as if to bind earth to the blazing serpent above. The people gathered in silence, filling the courtyards, pressing along the causeways, standing shoulder to shoulder upon rooftops. None dared speak too loud, for the fire above demanded reverence. Children clutched at their mothers' cloaks, warriors rested their obsidian blades at their sides, old men leaned on their staffs, eyes raised though dim with age. All waited, hearts thundering with fear and faith, as the priests began their solemn rites. Drums sounded once more, deeper than before, rolling like thunder through the stone corridors, through the lake's still waters, through the very bones of the people. Shell trumpets blared, long and mournful, their cries reaching outward as if to summon the gods themselves from the farthest edge of the sky. The chants rose, low at first, then louder, filling the night with words that had been sung since the birth of the empire, words meant to steady the balance of worlds. Atop the Templo Mayor, priests painted in crimson and black lifted their arms to the heavens. Copal smoke wreathed their bodies, flames leapt at their feet. One by one, offerings were brought forth, maize, jade, cacao, quetzal feathers shimmering in the firelight. All were cast into the flames, each gift a plea, each gift a hope that the serpent's fire might soften its gaze. But greater offerings were demanded. Warriors chosen by fate and oath ascended the steep stone steps, proud and solemn, knowing the gods awaited their hearts. Flutes wailed, drums pounded, chants surged, and the fire above blazed brighter as obsidian flashed. The lifeblood of men flowed upon the altar, steaming in the night air, carried by fire and smoke upward toward the serpent that glared from the sky. The crowd trembled as the sacrifices were given. Some wept openly, others bowed their heads, but none turned away. For in their hearts they knew such gifts were not cruelty but necessity, the ancient bond between mortals and gods. If the heavens sent fire, then fire must be answered. If the serpent carried warning, then blood must speak in return. And yet, as the last heart was lifted high, as the final cries echoed and the flames consumed the offerings, the comet did not waver. Still it burned, vast and terrible, its fiery body stretching unbroken from edge to edge of the world. No prayer, no gift, no sacrifice seemed enough to move it. It lingered, watching, waiting, as if the gods themselves held their breath for what was yet to come. Path of fire. Nights passed, yet the serpent did not fade. Night after night it stretched across the heavens, unchanging, eternal, its fire burning into the memory of all who beheld it. No dawn could banish it, for though the sun rose bright over the valley, the comet's tail lingered pale against the day, a ghost of flame that refused to leave the sky. The people whispered among themselves, some in fear, some in awe, all in uncertainty. Along the causeways, traders spoke in hushed tones, wondering if distant cities too had seen the fire. In the markets, mothers bartered with lowered voices, glancing upward as though the serpent might descend upon them. Farmers paused in their chinampas, leaning on their poles, eyes lingering not on their crops but on the heavens above. Even warriors, bold and fierce, felt unease settle upon their hearts, their hands tightening upon obsidian blades as though an unseen enemy watched from the firmament. Stories spread like fire through dry reeds. Some said the serpent was Quetzalcoatl himself, returned from the east as he had promised, blazing a path across the sky to announce his coming. Others whispered that it was Tezcatlipoca's snare, a warning of punishment for forgotten duties and faltering devotion. Still others feared it was no god at all but a sign of doom, a fire sent to consume the empire in days yet to come. Montezuma listened to these voices, though he spoke little in return. His face grew grave, his eyes darker, his steps slower, as though each day the serpent's fire pressed heavier upon his shoulders. He summoned more omens, more visions, more signs, priests watching the flight of birds, seers gazing into obsidian mirrors, dreamers speaking of rivers of flame. And everywhere, in every vision, the serpent appeared, its fire cutting across the horizon, its gaze fixed upon Tenochtitlan. The city itself seemed changed beneath its presence. Fires burned longer in the night, as though men feared to let the dark return. Prayers lengthened, offerings multiplied, chants rose with greater urgency from the temples. And still the serpent lingered, its fire carving a path through the heavens, unbroken, unrelenting, as if guiding fate toward an end no man could escape. Each night the people lifted their eyes to follow its trail, their hearts beating with dread and wonder. Each dawn they found it waiting still, a pale scar in the morning sky. The serpent's path was not only above them, it was within them, etched into their thoughts, carved into their dreams. And though no one yet knew what doom or deliverance it carried, all felt it drawing nearer, step by step, beat by beat, like fire spreading unseen until it touches all that lives. Empire at twilight. The comet lingered still, endless nights and endless days, its fiery body burning against the heavens as though etched there for eternity. No cloud could veil it, no rain could quench it, no prayer could draw it away. It had become part of the world, as much as the sun or moon, yet unlike them it brought no comfort. It was a flame without warmth, a fire without end, a serpent whose gaze could not be turned. In Tenochtitlan, the people moved beneath its glow like shadows of themselves. They whispered more than they spoke, they prayed more than they sang, they feared more than they hoped. The markets bustled, the temples smoked, the causeways thrummed with footsteps, yet all was touched by the same heaviness, the same silence that clung to the heart. For no matter where they walked, the serpent watched. No matter how they labored, the serpent followed. Montezuma grew silent in his palace, his eyes hollow with sleepless nights. His counselors brought him news of tribute, of wars, of distant cities, but he heard them as though through water, his thoughts always drawn back to the fire above. He sat in council yet gazed upward. He walked through gardens yet sought the horizon. He lay upon mats yet dreamed only of flame. In his visions he saw strangers crossing the sea, clad in iron, carrying thunder, their steps aligned with the serpent's path. And though he told no man all that he saw, the fear etched upon his face was enough. Priests continued their offerings, their chants, their cries that shook the very stones, but the comet did not waver. Warriors sharpened their blades, mothers pressed their children close, farmers bent low to the soil, yet still the fire lingered, unbroken. It seemed the gods themselves had fixed their eyes upon the Mexica, holding their breath as they awaited what was to come. And so the empire stood beneath the serpent's blaze, caught between glory and ruin, between the strength of their city and the weight of the Omen. Night after night, Montezuma raised his gaze, his eyes reflecting the serpent's fire, his lips pressed in silence. For he knew, as all his people knew in their hearts, that such a sign was not given lightly. The fiery serpent had carved its decree upon the sky, and though its meaning lay veiled, its promise was clear. Change was coming, and with it, the twilight of all they had known. Shooting stars' radiance, celestial ascent of Prince Bantugan. Night shimmered over the islands. Prince Bantugan's spirit rose as a star, sending falling stars to light the Philippine skies. Origins of a Prince. Long ago, across the islands of Mindanao, a child was born whose life would be sung for generations. Prince Bantugan came into the world beneath the glow of a moon that seemed to linger, as if waiting to witness the rise of greatness. From the first cry of the newborn, the elders knew he was no ordinary child. A hush fell over the palace courtyard, a stillness that spoke of destiny. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying whispers of valor through the coconut groves and across the silver rivers. Bantugan grew strong and swift, his body forged like polished wood, yet tempered by a heart that knew kindness and compassion. He learned the ways of warriors and kings, mastering the sword, the spear, and the bow, each movement precise as the stars above. The elders of the court watched him with quiet awe, for his courage seemed to bloom naturally, not forced. And the people began to speak of him in reverent tones, calling him the prince whose deeds would outshine the ordinary, whose valor would ripple far beyond the islands themselves. In the quiet hours of dawn, he wandered the palace gardens and the forests beyond, listening to the call of the birds, the rustle of bamboo, the murmur of rivers. He learned patience and wisdom from the world itself, from the earth beneath his feet and the heavens above. Every step of his youth carried the weight of promise, a promise that his life would shape not only his people's fate, but also leave a mark upon the very sky. Tales of his early feats spread swiftly, from contests of skill among young nobles to daring ventures across distant hills and forests. Bantugan proved himself again and again. He was a prince who laughed easily, yet fought with unmatched focus, a young man whose eyes shone with courage and whose heart beat for justice. The songs of minstrels carried his name from village to village, across rivers and mountains, and even to the distant shores, weaving him into the memory of all who heard. And though he walked the earth as mortal, there was always a sense of something greater. A spark within him, a quiet light that mirrored the stars, hinted at a destiny that reached beyond islands, seas, and mountains. For even as a child, Bantugan's life seemed guided by unseen hands, leading him toward feats of valor, trials of courage, and ultimately, a journey that would lift his spirit into the heavens themselves. Feats of valor. As Bantugan grew, his fame spread across the islands, carried on the voices of travelers, minstrels, and elders. He became a prince whose strength was unmatched, whose skill in battle seemed touched by the very gods themselves. From the forests to the mountains, from rivers to distant shores, tales were told of his courage, of the ways he faced challenges with both wisdom and unmatched bravery. He mastered the arts of the warrior, not only through practice but through deeds that left the people in awe. With spear and sword, he defended his kingdom from marauders who sought to disturb the peace. He rode swift horses across the hills, leapt over rivers, and climbed mountains where the clouds themselves seemed to touch the earth. In every contest, every challenge, he moved with precision, his mind as sharp as his blade, his heart steadfast. Yet his valor was not only in battle. Bantugan was known for the kindness that tempered his strength. He aided villages struck by famine, guided lost travelers through dense forests, and settled disputes among his people with fairness and wisdom. The songs sung of him spoke not only of courage but of the harmony he brought to the land, of a prince whose power was balanced by mercy, whose heart was as luminous as the stars he would one day join. Stories of his daring ventures became legend. In one tale, he confronted a giant serpent that threatened the rivers, calming its rage with courage and cleverness, leaving the waters safe for the villagers. In another, he outwitted rival warriors in contests of skill, proving not only strength but intelligence, and earning respect far beyond his kingdom. Each tale wove a tapestry of heroism, a life lived fully, a heart open to both challenge and love. The islands themselves seemed to celebrate his deeds. The wind carried his name from mountain to mountain, the rivers sparkled as if in recognition, and the forests whispered of his courage to every creature within. Even the night sky, vast and endless, seemed to hold a quiet reverence, as though the stars waited for the prince to one day join them, to leave the earth and blaze across the heavens. Bantugan's feats of valor were not merely for glory. They were proof of a life aligned with purpose, a soul destined for a greater journey. Each victory, each act of courage, each display of wisdom was a step toward the moment when the mortal world would release him, and the heavens would receive him as a shining presence. And in this way, the people began to understand that the prince was not merely of flesh and blood, but a spirit whose destiny would one day be written among the stars. Trail of light. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the islands in a glow of amber and gold, and the sky deepened to indigo, dotted with the first glimmers of stars. Prince Bantugan stood upon the highest hill, surveying the lands he had protected and loved. Every mountain, every river, every palm and grove bore witness to his courage, his justice, and his devotion. His heart swelled with pride, yet a quiet knowing stirred within him, as if the winds themselves whispered that his journey was far from over. Bantugan's life had been a tapestry of valor, of deeds sung across the islands, of trials overcome and hearts inspired. Yet the time would come when even a prince of great courage must leave the mortal world. In the stories of the elders, it was said that the heavens awaited him, that his spirit, luminous and steadfast, would rise to join the stars, becoming a light for all to see. And on this evening, as the first fireflies flickered over the rivers and forests, that destiny stirred closer, like a gentle tide approaching the shore. He descended into the valleys one last time, walking among the people whose lives he had touched. Farmers in the rice fields lifted their eyes, feeling a presence that was not quite the wind, not quite the earth, but something more. Children whispered the prince's name, sensing the greatness of a soul larger than life. And though none could see the path that awaited him, all felt its inevitability, a quiet brilliance shimmering just beyond the horizon. When the moon rose fully, silver and luminous, Bantugan climbed once more to the high cliffs overlooking the sea. There he paused, letting his gaze sweep across the islands he had called home. In that moment, a light grew upon his chest, faint at first, then brightening until it mirrored the stars themselves. The pulse of his courage, his wisdom, and his love radiated outward, forming a trail of brilliance that stretched across the sky, a bridge between earth and the heavens. And then, as if lifted by invisible hands, his spirit began to rise. Higher and higher, beyond the mountains, past the clouds, toward the deep expanse above. The light that followed him scattered in radiant arcs, each streak a promise of remembrance, each spark a sign of the prince who had walked the islands with honor. This trail of light marked the beginning of the phenomenon that generations would later call the shooting stars, a celestial echo of a mortal life made eternal. The islands below glimmered faintly in the brilliance of his ascent. Rivers reflected the light, forests shimmered under its glow, and the winds carried its warmth and presence across the seas. Even the first stars in the night seemed to lean closer, joining in the celebration of a prince whose life had bridged earth and sky. And so the trail of light lingered, a reminder of valor, of love, and of a spirit that had risen to the heavens, leaving behind a legacy written among the stars. Coconut Grove. The night settled over the islands, soft and still, as if the world itself were holding its breath. In a quiet grove of coconut trees, where the leaves swayed gently under the silver glow of the moon, Prince Bantugan met the final moments of his mortal life. His body, strong and noble, had borne countless trials, yet even the greatest of heroes must one day surrender to fate. Legends tell that Bantugan faced his last battle not for glory, but to protect the people he cherished. He fought with courage undiminished, each strike a testament to his heart, each movement a reminder of the honor that had defined his life. And when his final breath came, it was said that the grove itself seemed to shimmer in recognition. The fronds of the coconut trees bent gently in the wind, and the moonlight glimmered upon the earth as if marking the passage of a spirit destined for the heavens. In that moment, Bantugan's soul rose, luminous and unbound, carrying with it the essence of all he had been. His valor, wisdom, and love transformed into a radiant presence that ascended beyond the mortal world. As he rose, the trail of his brilliance stretched across the night sky, casting arcs of shimmering light above the islands. This was the first sign that his spirit had become one with the heavens, a luminous figure whose journey would be remembered for generations. The people of the islands would later tell of seeing shooting stars streak across the night, and though they could not see Bantugan himself, they understood that these sparks were his spirit moving through the heavens. They were reminders of a prince who had lived with courage and heart, who had given his life for the protection and happiness of others. In the quiet of the grove, under the gentle sway of palms and the soft murmur of the wind, the earth bore witness to the transformation of a mortal into the eternal. Even the sky seemed to celebrate his ascent. Stars shimmered brighter, tracing his path across the firmament. The moon cast a silver glow over the grove, illuminating the traces of light left behind. And in that sacred moment, the islands themselves seemed alive, honoring the prince who had walked among them, and who now traversed the heavens as a luminous reminder of bravery and love. From this grove and that night onward, the falling stars of Philippine legend were said to carry the memory of Prince Bantugan. Each streak across the sky, each brief flash of light, was a whisper of his courage, a spark of his heart, and a sign that mortal life could rise beyond, leaving beauty, memory, and inspiration in its wake. River of Stars. As Prince Bantugan's mortal life ended, his spirit rose beyond the grove, luminous and unbound, carrying the essence of all he had been. Above the islands, the sky opened in quiet wonder, and the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, welcoming a new presence among their ranks. His ascent was gentle yet radiant, a river of light flowing across the heavens, weaving through constellations, and leaving a trail that shimmered like liquid silver. The river of stars stretched across the firmament, bright and eternal, a luminous path marking the transformation of a hero into legend. Each gleaming point along the way reflected the courage, wisdom, and love that had defined Bantugan's life. They were not mere lights in the sky, but the embodiment of a soul that had touched the earth, the people, and the lands he cherished. Legends tell that the islands below could feel his presence, even as his form became celestial. The mountains, rivers, and forests shimmered faintly in the reflection of his trail, as though the earth itself honored the journey of a prince whose deeds had been sung across generations. From that luminous river, the first falling stars were born, sparks of light cast down to the mortal realm to remind people of heroism, love, and the eternal bond between earth and sky. Bantugan's spirit moved steadily, carrying memories of his life, the battles fought, the people protected, the lands nurtured. And yet, even as he rose, he remained connected to the islands, to the earth he had loved, and to the stories that would ensure his name lived on. In the night sky, he became a bridge, a luminous connection between mortal life and the heavens, a sign that courage and virtue could transcend the bounds of the world. The river of stars stretched further, winding over seas and islands, arcs of light rippling across the heavens. Each shooting star that broke free from the trail became a messenger, a fragment of the prince's enduring spirit, streaking across the night to inspire wonder, hope, and reverence in all who beheld it. And so the people learned to look to the skies, to watch the falling stars, and to remember Bantugan, not just as a prince of the past, but as a presence that continued to shine above them, eternal and luminous. Through this river of stars, his legend was made immortal. Every streak of light, every falling star, carried the story of a prince whose life had been a testament to valor, kindness, and love. And in the quiet nights that followed, when the islands slept beneath the moon and the wind whispered through the palms, the heavens shone with the memory of Bantugan, whose spirit had become a river of light stretching across eternity. Skyward Embrace. Bantugan's spirit, radiant and unwavering, continued its journey through the night sky, leaving trails of light that shimmered like molten silver across the vast expanse above the islands. The stars themselves seemed to bend closer, as if welcoming one of their own. Each pulse of his ascent carried the memories of his life, courage in battle, wisdom in counsel, and a heart that had known love, kindness, and devotion to his people. As he rose higher, the heavens opened, revealing vast constellations, glimmering nebulas, and the quiet brilliance of distant galaxies. His luminous form moved among them with ease, becoming part of the celestial order, yet retaining the warmth and essence of his mortal life. The transformation was complete, yet gentle, a seamless merging of earthly valor with eternal radiance. Legends tell that the first shooting stars were born from this ascent. Small sparks, fragments of his brilliance, broke free from the trail of his spirit, streaking across the sky, reaching down toward the islands to inspire awe and wonder. Each fleeting flash was a message, a reminder to the people below that the deeds of the brave and the virtuous could transcend mortality, leaving light in their wake. Bantugan's ascent was not hurried. It was a graceful, measured rise, each moment a reflection of the balance he had maintained in life, strength tempered by wisdom, courage softened by compassion. The winds of the heavens seemed to carry him upward, lifting him higher with a gentle, eternal rhythm. The moon, luminous and patient, cast a silver glow upon the islands below, tracing the arc of his journey in reflection across rivers, mountains, and seas. In this sacred ascent, the islands beneath seemed to shimmer with quiet recognition. Though the people could not see him directly, they sensed his presence in the night sky, in the shimmer of every star, in the streak of every shooting star. And from that night onward, whenever a star fell across the heavens, the people remembered Prince Bantugan, their prince, their hero, their celestial guardian. Thus, the heavens welcomed him, and his spirit became eternal. The prince who had walked the islands, who had defended his people and nurtured his lands, now moved among the stars, luminous and unending. And in the quiet nights that followed, when the islands slept beneath moon and wind, the heavens gleamed with the memory of his valor, his heart, and the enduring light of a life elevated to the eternal. Island Vigil. Even after Bantugan's ascent into the heavens, his presence lingered over the islands, a quiet but luminous watch that stretched across the night sky. The people who had known his deeds or heard the stories of his valor looked upward and felt a subtle warmth, a sense that their prince continued to guard, guide, and inspire from above. The heavens had become his new domain, yet his care for the islands remained, woven into the light of the stars that now adorned the sky. Legends tell that his spirit did not rest in a single place but moved freely among the constellations, leaving trails of falling stars in his passage. Each shooting star that streaked across the night sky was a fragment of Bantugan's essence, a reminder that courage and virtue could endure beyond mortal life. When a spark fell, it was said that it carried a message of hope, of protection, of remembrance, touching the hearts of those who looked upon it with reverence. From the high peaks to the valleys below, from the rivers to the shores of distant seas, the islands reflected the celestial vigil. Every glimmer of moonlight, every ripple of water, every rustle of the palms seemed to echo the prince's enduring presence. The people, whether they knew it or not, had grown accustomed to this quiet illumination, this gentle watch that reminded them of the eternal bond between the earth and the heavens. Stories of the shooting stars became intertwined with daily life. Travelers would see a streak across the sky and pause in awe, offering a silent prayer or wish to the prince who now traversed the heavens. Farmers would glance upward as they tended their fields, feeling the reassurance of a guiding light above. Even children, lulled to sleep beneath the glimmering night, dreamed of the luminous prince who watched over them, a guardian whose story bridged the mortal and the eternal. Bantugan's vigil was not merely symbolic. It was a continuation of his life's purpose, a celestial extension of his courage and care. The stars were his companions, the moon his witness, and the islands below the recipients of his eternal protection. Each night, as the heavens shimmered and shooting stars traced delicate arcs across the sky, the people remembered the hero who had walked among them, and they felt the comforting presence of a prince who had become part of the night itself. And so the vigil continued, silent yet enduring, a luminous reminder that even when life passes from mortal hands, its essence can linger in beauty, in memory, and in light. For generations to come, the people of the islands would gaze at the stars and recall the courage, wisdom, and love of Prince Bantugan, whose spirit had ascended to watch over them for all eternity. Immortal glow. Through countless nights, the islands of the Philippines remained under the silent, luminous presence of Prince Bantugan. His ascent into the heavens had transformed him into a star among stars, yet the memory of his life and deeds radiated endlessly, touching every heart that gazed upward with wonder. The shooting stars that streaked across the sky were whispers of his courage, fragments of his spirit scattered across the firmament to remind all who watched of valor, love, and devotion. Generations came and went, yet the stories of Bantugan endured, carried from elders to children, sung in the villages, and remembered in the hearts of those who looked to the night sky. Every falling star became a living testament to his journey, a luminous echo of a mortal prince elevated to the eternal. Parents pointed to streaks of light above to teach their children of bravery. Lovers watched the fleeting sparks to dream of loyalty and constancy. Warriors felt courage renewed when a bright star traced its path across the heavens. Even the cosmos seemed to acknowledge his presence. Constellations shifted subtly, as if bowing to the spirit of a hero who had walked among mortals, yet now traversed the night with grace and dignity. The moonlight fell softer upon the earth, casting gentle silver over forests, rivers, and mountains, as though honoring a prince whose life had bridged the mortal and the eternal. Every glow of a star, every shimmer along the horizon, was a reminder that his essence endured, luminous and steadfast, a guiding light for those who believed in the extraordinary power of a noble heart. Legends tell that when a shooting star streaks across the Philippine skies, it is Bantugan's spirit once more taking flight. His light touches the earth briefly, yet profoundly, leaving sparks of hope, inspiration, and wonder. Those who behold it feel a connection to something greater, a sense that courage and goodness do not vanish with mortal life, but are etched into the cosmos, everlasting. And so, Prince Bantugan's story continues to glow. His life of valor, wisdom, and love transformed into an eternal presence that moves across the night sky, guiding, protecting, and inspiring. The heavens carry his legacy in luminous arcs, and the islands below carry his memory in the hearts of the people. In every falling star, in every shimmer of the heavens, Bantugan lives on, a prince made eternal, a light that will never fade, an eternal glow for all who look to the skies. Meteorite's earthly descent, the Elbogen cosmic curse. A shard of the cosmos fell over Loket, Bohemia, carrying the awe of witnesses and the weight of a nobleman's fate. Stars foretell. Night draped itself over the rolling hills and dense forests of Bohemia. The small town of Loket rested quietly beneath a sky alive with countless stars. Their light shimmered on the river's surface, tracing silver paths over the gently swaying reeds, as if the heavens themselves were preparing to deliver a message to the world below. Villagers, wrapped in thick cloaks to ward off the chill, paused in their routines, noticing a strange tension in the air. Dogs howled from distant yards, and owls perched on gnarled branches seemed unusually restless. The ordinary sounds of night felt amplified, charged with anticipation. High above, among the constellations that had guided farmers and travelers for generations, a new light began to pulse faintly, brighter, sharper than any star the villagers had seen. It streaked across the sky with unearthly speed, leaving a fiery trail that lingered for a heartbeat. Mothers clasped their children, pointing upward in awe, while elders crossed themselves quietly, murmuring prayers that the heavens might be merciful. From atop the cliffs that cradled Loket Castle, the Burgrave's halls glimmered with the flicker of torches. Peter von Ilberg, the nobleman whose pride and cruelty were spoken of in hushed tones across the valley, paced his private chambers. He was unaware that the omen of his destiny had already pierced the night. Yet the air seemed heavier, laden with the scent of smoke and ozone, carrying a subtle warning that something extraordinary, powerful, and eternal was falling toward the earth. The fiery fragment descended rapidly, its brilliance reflecting off rooftops, river waters, and frost-covered fields. Villagers gasped, their hearts thundering in unison as the object grew closer. Sparks leapt from the edges of the meteorite as it neared the ground, scattering like a shower of tiny stars. The air vibrated with a low hum, a resonance that seemed to echo from the heavens themselves. A sudden wind stirred the trees, and a ripple ran through the river, as if nature were bracing for an arrival unlike any before. The impact was thunderous. A shockwave rolled across the valley, rattling windows and sending animals into frantic flight. Smoke and heat rose from the crater where the iron mass had embedded itself, glowing faintly under the moon's gaze. Villagers approached cautiously, marveling at the sheer size and otherworldly presence of the stone. It radiated a subtle warmth and pulsed with a quiet energy that seemed alive, as if carrying the will of the cosmos itself. Even the Burgrave felt it, drawn by curiosity, arrogance, and perhaps a whisper of fate. Peter von Ilberg descended from his castle, his footsteps echoing on the cobblestones. The villagers whispered that his eyes, wide with awe and a hint of fear, met the meteorite's dark metallic surface for the first time. And in that moment, a legend was born, a story of iron fallen from the heavens, of a nobleman bound to a celestial fragment, and of a town forever marked by the arrival of a stone from the stars. The Burgrave's fate. The villagers of Loket held their breath as Peter von Ilberg approached the fallen fragment. His black cloak swirled behind him in the chilly night air, the iron meteorite glowing faintly with a coppery light that painted the nearby cobblestones and cottages in a strange, otherworldly hue. He circled the stone, peering at the grooves carved into its surface by its fiery descent, each line a scar from the heavens themselves. The air felt heavier, charged with anticipation, as if the meteorite recognized the arrogance of the man who dared approach. When the Burgrave's gloved hand finally touched the cold metallic surface, a shock ran through him, not a pain of flesh, but a deep resonance that seemed to vibrate through his bones and stir the air around him. The villagers gasped, clutching one another, for they too felt a strange pressure, a subtle trembling that rose from the soil and coursed through the stones of the village square. Whispers spread quickly. The heavens had delivered judgment, a curse bound to the very iron that now resisted human hands. Peter von Ilberg tried to command his servants to drag the meteorite to the castle. Ropes and chains were brought forth, men grunting and straining with all their strength. Yet the stone remained unmoved, as if rooted in the earth or held by unseen cosmic hands. Sparks leapt from its surface whenever iron met iron, leaping like tiny stars before vanishing into the night. The Burgrave's frustration turned to fear, his pride shaken by the realization that this was no ordinary stone. Legends say that in that instant, the Burgrave's spirit became entwined with the meteorite. It was as though the celestial fragment had absorbed his arrogance and cruelty, binding him in place as a warning to all who might follow in his footsteps. For nights afterward, the villagers reported strange sounds, soft hums, distant echoes, and the faintest of whispers that seemed to rise from the stone itself. They claimed to hear commands, laments, even laughter twisted by cosmic judgment. No one dared touch it again. The blacksmith who had approached to study its surface felt the metal pulse beneath his hands, as though alive. The Burgrave's servants refused to linger near it, claiming dreams haunted by glowing eyes and the sound of iron grinding across stone. Over time, the meteorite became more than rock and metal. It became a sentinel, a keeper of stories, a reminder that human arrogance could not escape the judgment of the heavens. Generations passed, yet the villagers of Loket continued to speak in hushed tones about the day the heavens intervened. Parents warned their children not to approach the iron, elders recounted every detail of the Burgrave's fate, and travelers passing through the valley felt the weight of awe and caution that clung to the air around the fallen star. The meteorite had become eternal, a fragment of the cosmos entwined with the fate of a nobleman, the land, and the hearts of those who bore witness. Attempts of mortal hands. In the days that followed, the meteorite became the center of both awe and unease for the people of Loket. Villagers gathered cautiously, speaking in hushed tones about the fiery fragment that had plummeted from the heavens. Even from a distance, its surface radiated a faint, pulsing warmth as though alive. Some whispered that it carried the Burgrave's trapped spirit, bound by cosmic fire to the iron that would neither yield nor forgive. Driven by curiosity, Peter von Ilberg summoned his strongest men to move the stone. Ropes, pulleys, and iron chains were brought forth, and men strained with all their might, their muscles trembling, their breath misting in the cool air. Yet the meteorite remained immovable, as if rooted in the very bones of the earth. Sparks leapt when iron met iron, tiny flashes that scattered across the ground like shooting stars. Each failed attempt seemed to thicken the air with tension, and the villagers watched, hearts pounding, as pride met the unyielding will of the cosmos. Elders advised caution. Some suggested that water might calm the restless fragment. With careful precision, the meteorite was lowered toward the river that wound past Loket. For a moment, it seemed to float unnaturally, hovering like a weightless dream before sinking with a resonant thud. But the next morning, to the villagers' astonishment, it had returned to its original resting place, untouched and eternal. The local blacksmith, old and wary, dared a closer inspection. He tapped it gently with his hammer, noting a sound unlike any earthly metal. It resonated with a deep, almost musical tone that seemed to echo from the stars themselves. Smoke curled from small cracks where the surface had absorbed the heat of its fall, and the air around it seemed heavier, charged with the presence of something far older than man. Stories multiplied. Those who approached the meteorite with greed or hubris suffered misfortune. Tools shattered, minor accidents befell them, and an unease settled in their hearts. The villagers began to see the meteorite as more than an object. It had become a guardian of its own legend, a reminder that the heavens had delivered judgment and that human hands were powerless to alter what the cosmos decreed. As night fell over Loket, the iron glimmered beneath the stars. Shadows of ancient trees stretched across its surface, and the river reflected its coppery glow like a molten mirror. Parents brought their children to view it safely from afar, weaving stories of the fallen Burgrave, of pride punished, and of the cosmic fragment that had transformed an ordinary night into a legend that would endure for centuries. The Guardians of the Stone. Years passed, yet the meteorite remained steadfast, unyielding to time, human ambition, or nature's whim. The villagers of Loket grew accustomed to its presence, but never familiar. Even the bravest dared only approach from a careful distance, bowing heads in respect as they passed by the glowing iron mass. The air around it seemed alive, charged with a subtle energy that whispered of celestial authority, and the ground beneath it felt warmer than the surrounding soil, as if the earth itself were honoring its fallen guest. Children peered through the safety of hedges, eyes wide with wonder, imagining the fire that had carved its path through the heavens. Elders recounted stories beside hearths, weaving tales of the Burgrave Peter von Ilberg, of his arrogance, and of the curse that had bound him to the stone. Even the livestock sensed its power. Horses shied when near, dogs barked nervously, and birds circled high above, as if keeping watch. The villagers' respect turned to ritual. Offerings of bread, wine, and small trinkets were left at its base during festivals, and on quiet nights, prayers were whispered for protection. The blacksmith would sometimes approach, hammer in hand, only to feel the stone's heartbeat resonating through his bones, reminding him that mortal strength could not alter the will of the cosmos. The meteorite had become a teacher of humility. a silent guardian that instructed all who approached in reverence. Seasons cycled through the valley, painting Loket in gold, white, and green. Winters brought frost that sparkled against the iron, reflecting starlight with an ethereal glow. Summers carried the scent of blooming meadows, mingling with the faint metallic tang that always seemed to hover near the stone. Rain made it shimmer, lightning from distant storms danced across its surface, and even in the quietest dawns it pulsed softly, a reminder that the heavens were never idle. Travelers spoke of its power in whispered tones, spreading tales beyond Bohemia. Scholars, priests, and pilgrims alike ventured to Loket to witness the Iron Sentinel. The meteorite inspired awe not only because of its celestial origin, but because it bore witness to the intersection of human pride and divine will. It stood as a fragment of the cosmos, eternally marking the land, teaching generations of villagers that some forces are beyond understanding, some judgments beyond defiance, and some fragments of the heavens belong not to man, but to legend itself. Scholars' curiosity. As decades unfolded, the meteorite's legend extended far beyond Loket. Scholars, alchemists, and travelers journeyed from distant towns and cities to witness the celestial fragment for themselves. Some came driven by curiosity, others by ambition, seeking to understand the iron that had fallen from the heavens, while others simply wished to marvel at its enduring presence. Each visitor approached cautiously, their steps hushed as if the stone demanded reverence. One crisp autumn morning, a learned man from Prague arrived, carrying instruments, parchment, and ink. He examined the grooves etched into the meteorite's surface, relics of its fiery descent, and marveled at its density and resilience. Tapping gently with a small hammer, he listened to the low, resonant tone that seemed to echo from another world entirely. The villagers watched with wide eyes, sensing that even the most cautious human curiosity could not diminish the stone's mystery. The scholar meticulously recorded his observations, sketching the patterns and noting the stone's weight and composition. Yet every attempt to move or alter it failed. Ropes snapped, levers bent, and chains resisted, leaving the iron in its original resting place. The villagers whispered that the meteorite's will was aligned with the heavens, that it could not be manipulated by mortal hands, and that the Burgrave's spirit remained entwined within its metallic mass. Legends grew richer with each new visitor. Some claimed that under the moonlight, the iron glimmered faintly, pulsing as though alive. Others swore they heard the Burgrave's voice, faint and sorrowful, riding the wind in syllables no human tongue could fully comprehend. Even as scientific instruments replaced superstition, the stone retained its aura of awe, a bridge between human understanding and the boundless cosmos. The villagers maintained their rituals alongside scholarly interest. Offerings of bread, wine, and herbs continued, candles burned long into the night, and prayers were whispered to honor the celestial fragment. The meteorite had become both a subject of inquiry and a sacred relic, a fragment of the heavens that carried the weight of human history, divine judgment, and cosmic wonder. Generations learned to respect it. Travelers departed with tales of its strange power and the legend of Loket, and its cursed nobleman continued to echo across time. Blood and iron. Through the years, the meteorite's presence cast a quiet but unshakable influence over Loket. Villagers respected it, yet the legend warned that pride or greed could invite misfortune. Occasionally, travelers or daring youths approached too closely, drawn by curiosity, and each time, small calamities befell them. Tools shattered, horses reared without cause, and faint injuries appeared on those who attempted to chip away even the smallest fragment. The iron seemed alive with memory holding within it the burden of the cursed Burgrave and the fiery journey from the heavens. The Burgrave's spirit, entwined with the meteorite, was said to stir when the stone was threatened. Some nights, faint murmurs and low hums echoed across the cobblestones of Loket, carrying warnings or regrets. The villagers learned that caution was not mere superstition. It was a matter of survival and respect. No one dared claim a peace, and offerings continued, bread, wine, and small tokens left at the stone's base in homage to both the heavens and the lessons it imparted. The meteorite became a silent teacher, demonstrating the weight of arrogance and the power of the cosmos. Even the blacksmith who had once dared to study its surface described feeling the iron pulse under his fingertips, a heat and rhythm that seemed to resonate from another world. Animals reacted instinctively as well. Dogs growled, birds circled, and horses stamped in agitation whenever anyone ventured too near. The earth beneath the stone vibrated faintly, a subtle but undeniable reminder that this fragment of the heavens was not to be trifled with. Seasons passed in unbroken rhythm. Winters glazed the meteorite with frost that glittered like molten silver. Summers allowed the sun to bounce off its coppery surface, and moonlight traced a luminous path across its iron contours. The villagers came to understand that the meteorite was more than a stone. It was a cosmic witness, a fragment of celestial power, and a guardian of the Burgrave's eternal tale. Stories of its fiery descent, the cursed nobleman, and the stone's unyielding nature spread beyond Loket, carried by travelers and chroniclers alike. Generations learned humility, awe, and reverence, recognizing that some fragments of the heavens are not gifts to be taken lightly. They are reminders of human limitations, of cosmic judgment, and of the extraordinary that exists just beyond mortal comprehension. The Elbogen meteorite remained steadfast, a shard of the cosmos forever entwined with the land, its people, and the echo of a nobleman's fate. Enduring wonder. As the centuries unfolded, the meteorite became the heart of countless tales whispered across Loket and beyond. Travelers passing through the valley spoke of a shard of the heavens that glimmered beneath the stars, a stone that had fallen with such fire and weight that the sky itself seemed to bend toward it. Villagers recounted to outsiders the story of the Burgrave, the curse, and the iron that could not be moved, their voices rich with awe and reverence. Children grew up with eyes wide at the sight of the meteorite. They imagined the fire that had streaked across the night sky, the sound of its impact echoing through the hills, and the unseen force that had bound a mortal soul to its metallic form. Elders told of the Burgrave's pride, his arrogance punished by the heavens, and of the cosmic lesson that had arrived unbidden on a cold night so long ago. Even the youngest learned that some things from the sky are beyond mortal understanding, and that respect and humility were the keys to living in harmony with such wonders. The meteorite's presence shaped festivals and rituals. Candles flickered at its base during autumn nights, bread and wine were left in silent homage, and the river nearby seemed to mirror its glow, reflecting both light and legend in gentle ripples. Scholars continued to study it, noting the iron's unusual density and strange markings, yet even the most learned men admitted that some mysteries were beyond human comprehension. And so, the stone held both scientific curiosity and sacred reverence within its unyielding form. Night after night, the meteorite shimmered beneath the constellations from which it had fallen. The stars seemed to acknowledge it, their light dancing on its surface in a quiet celestial symphony. Winds carried stories across the valley, the rustle of leaves whispering of cosmic power and human humility, while distant howls of animals reminded all that nature itself had learned to respect this fragment of the sky. Generations came and went, yet the legend endured, growing richer with each, binding the people of Loket to the memory of the night the heavens had intervened. The Elbogen meteorite remained as it always had, immovable, radiant, and eternal, a fragment of the cosmos, a lesson in humility, and a keeper of stories. It reminded all who saw it that the universe is vast, unpredictable, and beautiful, and that some celestial messengers fall not to reward, but to teach, to inspire, and to endure through the ages. Loket's people carried its legend in their hearts, ensuring that the wonder of that fateful night would never fade, as long as the stars themselves continued to shine above. Eternal Sentinel. Centuries passed, and the meteorite remained steadfast, a silent witness to the ebb and flow of life in Loket. The town changed around it. New cottages rose, forests shifted, rivers carved new paths, but the iron fragment endured, unchanged, glowing faintly beneath the ever-turning sky. The villagers had long come to see it not merely as stone, but as a fragment of the heavens, a cosmic messenger, and the eternal reminder of the Burgrave's fate. Stories told beside hearths painted the night with images of fire streaking across the sky, of the nobleman whose pride had invited the heavens' judgment, and of the mysterious power that had bound him to the fallen iron. Children listened wide-eyed, imagining the meteorite alive with memory and the lingering spark of a soul entwined with its mass. Even scholars who studied the meteorite acknowledged that some mysteries were beyond explanation, that its presence was as much spiritual as physical, and that its tale was meant to endure as long as the stars continued to shine. Nature itself seemed to honor the stone. Winds whispered through the valley as though carrying messages from the heavens. Birds circled above in vigilant patterns, and the river reflected the meteorite's coppery glow, turning ordinary nights into luminous spectacles. Travelers often paused, struck by awe, sensing that this fragment was no ordinary rock but a sentinel of cosmic forces, bridging the mortal and the celestial, the earthly and the divine. Loket's people revered the meteorite with offerings, festivals, and quiet contemplation. Yet it was the lessons it imparted that endured most: humility, respect, and the understanding that the universe holds powers far beyond human reach. Generations had come and gone, each leaving their own stories beside it, each touched by its quiet but unyielding presence. The Burgrave's arrogance had long since faded from memory, but the stone retained its lesson, immutable and eternal. And so the meteorite stood, a shard of the cosmos embedded in Bohemia's soil, its glow a testament to the night the heavens intervened. Eternal in its watch, timeless in its story, it remained the sentinel of Loket, carrying the awe of those who beheld it and the weight of the skies that sent it. The fragment of heaven endured, whispering of judgment and wonder, of mortality and the cosmos, ensuring that the story of the Elbogen meteorite and the lesson of the Burgrave's pride would live on as long as the stars themselves graced the night.